Continuing coverage now on a high-profile murder trial back underway today. Opening statements started in the trial of Omonte Bell and Dyrell Green. They are both charged in the deaths of Brianna Williams and Cordreese Tyson in July of 2021. Williams and Tyson were shot to death inside the home of George Taylor III, the former COO of True Colors. WECT's Ariana Bertolotti is back in the courtroom for us today. Ariana, the state began calling witnesses today, too.
Yeah, that's right, Fran. We heard from a number of people today. That includes Cordreese Tyson's mother, Brianna Williams' father, a 911 deputy director, and the beginning testimony of a responding State Highway Patrol officer. Now, the state is working to establish its perception of the characters and scene through the witnesses they called so far. Cordreese Tyson's mother was asked about her son's involvement in a gang. Both families were asked about the last time they saw their child before the shooting and any mention of problems before the incident occurred. The trial will start again tomorrow with more testimony from a responding officer. Reporting live outside the courthouse, Ariana Bertolotti, WECT News.